In a time when Israel had turned far from the Lord, when altars to Baal stood where worship of the true God once burned, a man stepped suddenly into history without introduction or lineage. His name was Elijah the Tishbite, and he appeared before King Ahab with a message that would shake the nation. Ahab had done more evil than the kings before him, marrying Jezebel and leading Israel into deep idol worship. And so Elijah declared with bold authority that there would be neither dew nor rain in the land except at his word. With that proclamation, the heavens closed and the drought began. At first it was subtle, the morning dew failing to appear and clouds passing without release. But soon the rivers shrank, crops withered, livestock weakened, and the ground split beneath relentless heat. The word of the Lord sent Elijah away from the king and into hiding by the brook Cherith, where he would learn dependence in isolation. There, in the quiet wilderness, ravens brought him bread and meat, morning and evening, and he drank from the brook while the nation suffered under the silent sky. Day after day, the prophet watched the water level drop, and eventually even the brook dried up, reminding him that when God withholds rain, he does so completely. Yet the same God who stopped the heavens still directed his steps, commanding him to go to Zarephath in Sidon, deep within foreign territory. At the city gate, Elijah met a widow gathering sticks, a woman preparing what she believed would be her final meal for herself and her son before they starved. When Elijah asked for water and bread, she confessed she had only a handful of flour and a little oil left, barely enough for one last portion. But Elijah told her not to fear and instructed her to make him a small loaf first, promising that the jar of flour would not be used up and the jug of oil would not run dry until the Lord sent rain. It was a command that required trust beyond reason. Yet she obeyed, and just as he had spoken, the flour did not fail and the oil did not diminish. In the middle of famine, God created daily provision. The miracle of provision was soon followed by tragedy. The widow's son fell ill, his breathing ceased, and his mother was left utterly devastated. She questioned why Elijah, this man of God, had ever entered her life, only to bring such sorrow. With a heavy heart, Elijah carried the lifeless child upstairs and laid him on his own bed. He cried out to the Lord with a desperate, unwavering faith. 3 times he stretched himself over the boy, pleading with God to let life return to him, and the Lord heard his prayer. Breath entered the child once more, and he lived. This moment, one of the first recorded resurrections in Scripture, was a profound testament to God's power. Elijah brought the living boy back down to his mother. Her deep sorrow instantly turned into astonished belief. She looked at Elijah and declared with conviction that the word of the Lord from his mouth was indeed the truth. After 3 long years of drought, the Lord commanded Elijah to present himself before King Ahab, promising that rain would finally return to the parched land. When Ahab saw the prophet, he immediately accused him. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" But Elijah stood firm. He replied that it was not he, but Ahab and his family who had brought trouble upon Israel by abandoning the Lord's commands to follow the false god, Baal. Elijah then issued a great challenge. He called for a gathering at Mount Carmel, summoning all the people of Israel and the prophets of Baal. It was time to settle, once and for all, who was the one true God. On one side stood 450 prophets of Baal. On the other, Elijah stood alone. He challenged the people to stop wavering between 2 opinions. He proposed a test: 2 altars, 2 bulls, but no fire. The God who answered by sending fire from heaven, he declared, would be recognized as the true God. the stage was set for a divine showdown. The prophets of Baal cried out from morning until noon, dancing and shouting, yet nothing happened. Elijah mocked them, suggesting their God might be sleeping or distracted. And in desperation, they cut themselves until blood flowed, but there was still no answer. When their efforts failed, Elijah rebuilt the broken altar of the Lord with 12 stones representing the tribes of Israel, arranged the sacrifice, and ordered water to be poured over it until everything was drenched and the trench overflowed. Then he prayed simply, asking the Lord to reveal himself. Immediately fire fell from heaven and consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and the water. The people fell on their faces and declared that the Lord alone is God, and the long silence of heaven was shattered by holy fire. After the fire came the promise of rain. Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel and bowed low, sending his servant to look toward the sea. 6 times there was nothing, but the 7th time a small cloud appeared on the horizon. Soon the sky darkened, thunder rolled, and heavy rain poured down, ending the drought that had begun with Elijah's declaration. What started as judgment ended in mercy as the land drank deeply once again. Yet victory on the mountain did not shield Elijah from fear in the valley. When Jezebel heard what had happened, she sent a message threatening his life. And the prophet who had stood boldly before hundreds fled into the wilderness. Exhausted and overwhelmed, he sat beneath a broom tree and prayed that he might die, believing he was alone and that his work had accomplished nothing lasting. Instead of rebuke, the Lord sent an angel to strengthen him with food and water, reminding him that even the strongest servants need rest and renewal. Elijah journeyed 40 days to Mount Horeb and sheltered in a cave where the Lord asked him why he had come. Elijah poured out his complaint, expressing his lowliness and zeal, and then stood on the mountain as commanded. A powerful wind tore through the rocks, but the Lord was not in the wind. An earthquake shook the ground, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. A fire blazed before him, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire came a gentle whisper, and in that quiet voice Elijah recognized the presence of God. The Lord assured him that 7,000 in Israel had not bowed to Baal, and that he was not alone in his faithfulness. God then gave Elijah new assignments, including the calling of his successor, Elisha. Elijah found him plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and threw his cloak over him, symbolizing the transfer of calling. Elisha left his livelihood behind and followed, serving faithfully beside the prophet of fire. Elijah continued to confront injustice, including King Ahab's wrongful seizure of Naboth's vineyard, where he boldly declared judgment against corruption and bloodshed, proving that his mission was not only about miracles, but about righteousness. As the years passed, the time came for Elijah's departure. He and Elisha traveled together from Gilgal to Bethel to Jericho and finally to the Jordan River. And at each stop, Elijah urged his companion to remain behind, yet Elisha refused to leave him. At the Jordan, Elijah struck the water with his cloak, and the river parted so they could cross on dry ground. On the other side, Elijah asked what he could do for Elisha before being taken away. And Elisha requested a double portion of his spirit, understanding the weight of prophetic responsibility. Suddenly, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared, and a whirlwind lifted Elijah into heaven, leaving behind his cloak as a sign that his mission would continue. Elisha picked up the cloak, returned to the Jordan, and struck the water, asking where the Lord, the God of Elijah, was now. The waters parted again, confirming that the same God who answered by fire still reigned. The life of Elijah was marked by drought and rain, despair and whisper, confrontation and ascension. And through it all, he proved that the Lord is the living God, sovereign over heaven and earth, faithful to sustain those who stand for him, even when they stand alone.